people in the chat are spoiling it, so
you want to just throw it out there, Steph?
I'm just saying. All right, with the 11th pick in the NFL draft, the 49ers have selected Georgia edge rusher Mykel Williams. And I am happy about this pick. I mean, this was one of the picks that I didn't feel like I'd have to explain to myself to try to get to like. So I think this draft went perfectly for the 49ers because I was really convinced that he would be going in like the top few picks before the Niners. So this is awesome.
So let's break it down. And I'm going to just say this. He was the guy that I wanted. I fell in love with Mykel Williams because of Dieter and Hutch. They have convinced me. If you look at the Dieter and Hutch draft guide, you should be very happy because they have Mykel Williams not just as the best edge rusher, not just as the best defensive player in the draft. They have him as the number one player in the entire freaking draft. Now, I don't know if he's that good, but damn, to get that guy at 11 without having to make any trades, this could be a very good move for the 49ers, Jay.
Yeah, and, John Lynch kind of spoiled it himself, talking about setting the edge. I think that's the whole idea of Mykel Williams, and it was all there. I think we were listening. I mean, of all the word salad that he gave, that felt like that was probably the biggest indicator of who it was going to be. But yeah, Mykel Williams is somebody who right now can play on the edge, and it allows them to be free with what they want to do with interior defensive line going forward. But, getting a running mate for Nick Bosa has been something that the 49ers have been trying to do since they had Dee Ford, unsuccessfully, unfortunately. And hopefully this is the long-term answer.
Levin, how you feeling right now?
I told you 4 months ago my preference was on edge. So I'm fine with it. They got one of the top guys. I'm not going to pretend like I know if he's a for sure thing, but I wanted edge. That was my preference going into the draft. I think it was back in January before the regular season even got over. I said edge or offensive tackle, and I have a preference for edge because they've been trying forever to fix that. And I think if they can fix that edge and have a true threat over there, then I think a lot of the issues, the second linebacker, the safeties, things like that, don't really matter a whole lot anymore. I mean, they'll still be in effect, but even if you get into third and shorts, you got 2 sack guys, you're going to be able to get the sack a good bit of the time to be able to save the day.
Steph, for anyone that doesn't know, what do we need to know about Mykel Williams?
I mean, yeah, we've been mentioning it. I think out of the edge rushers, he's one of the best, if not the best, run defender of the group. And with the 49ers, being one of the worst run defenses last year, I think this fills a huge need for them. And he's not that bad as a pass rusher either. I think, from one thing we were mentioning earlier about pass rush arsenal, his is not very deep, but like we were saying, I don't think it needs to be very deep. That's something he can work on, but he has a high floor because of the run defense. At the very least, he's going to be able to be in on those base downs early on in his career. So I really like this pick, and I think he's going to fit in great with the Niners.
Let me just read a little bit from the Dieter and Hutch draft guide, if I may. Superlative, they put in the Darth Sidious voice, unlimited power. Every down, stud edge rusher, game wrecker once he's healthy and figures out tempo and improves his pass rush craft, which is already at a much higher level than is recognized. His downside is a guy whose technique is a little too sloppy and may never quite learn how to use his body to its full potential. Here's Jake Hutchinson's take. Quote, I mean, good Lord, does this guy drive? And he played on 60% on a bad ankle. I get it. The production of 5 sacks is underwhelming. And after 2 years with 4.5 sacks, but watch the tape, please. Teams had to have a plan for him, and it often involved doubles. And that's just with him playing a hell of a lot of 4-eye and sometimes just straight 3 technique. He didn't just set the edge. He destroyed it consistently, and he was wreaking havoc with power to consistently close the pocket and a swipe move that, while could use sharpening, is very effective. To be a complete edge setter, you need to have power. Mykel is head and shoulders above everyone else with it, and he's not the lost pass rush cause some believe him to be. He's an edge collapsing force with shades of, and I'm quoting still, a T-Rex, but with long arms. That sounds pretty good to me.
It's a hell of a description.
I was gonna say if it's half that, then it's a good pick.
That's true. Gabe Garoni, YouTube channel member. Thank you very much for the super chat. Says, what happened to Bosa announcing the pick?
I forgot about that.
Oh, that's good.
You gave me the opportunity and everything too. Like, you had me announce it. Is it
That's
too
true.
late?
I blame you. We need Michelle in the box, the final Avenger. Hopefully this is a good sign for the rest of the draft and we can avoid turning into the California Cowboys. I'm happy. This is one of the rare times where the person I wanted the 49ers to pick, they took. Now, I fully blame Peter and Hut, but they didn't do this. They didn't do the crazy thing, right? How many times have we talked about with the 49ers where, oh my God, that, they took someone that no one had in the consensus and what are they doing? And well, I hope this is good. Maybe the 49ers know something we don't. They didn't do that, right? Maybe this new draft philosophy thing that they have going on, Jay, is just to do the smart thing.
Well, and I think the tea leaves were all there. You don't bring Robert Saleh and Gus Bradley in and use your first pick on offensive linemen when your defensive line is completely obliterated, right? Your run defense was poor. So you draft the best defending edge rusher to complement all of that. So I think that was part of the deal. Robert Saleh comes over and says, we need to revamp this defense. We're going to lose all these players. And then you go out there and you draft an offensive lineman with the first pick. I don't know if that really makes a lot of sense in rebuilding this team right away. I will say this for the people that are upset and they want offensive line. After Membu and Campbell, I'm good on the other guys early on. I'd rather take shots at offensive line in the second and third round. There's nobody really here that blows me away. And when you have Nolan and Jahad Campbell and Walker and all these guys on the board, you take a shot on one of those guys, and they took it on Williams. So like the idea that just taking an offensive lineman for the sake of saying that you took a lineman at 11 is poor process and how bad franchises are run.
Well, and I saw the reaction to Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft yesterday, 11, where he had the Niners taking Gray Zabel. And people were flipping out. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Half of you guys complain that Kyle Shanahan doesn't prioritize offensive line. And then you were going to get mad because he prioritized it too much. So it was like whoever they picked, people were going to be unhappy, Levin.
Welcome to fan bases.
Yeah, right.
No matter what happens, there's going to be a good-sized group that are unhappy. It doesn't matter. They could win this Super Bowl, and there's going to be people out there whining about the way they did it.
Real Goat 16 says the Niners have a T-Rex on one side and a bear on the other, and a hyena too. And Diamondor. Apparently, we're going for like the all-animal defense.
I think that's a good.
And a dog in Malik, right? And a dog in Malik, right?
Yeah, that's true. I don't know what kind of a personality is Mykel Williams. Is he like a Drake Greenlaw psycho guy? Because I'm not going to lie, like. This defense could use some psychos. Does anybody know?
I don't know. I haven't really heard him speak or anything like that. I mean, if you want to do what 49ers fans are going to do is, every pick is a dog, right? Like that video from that guy. He's like dog. He's like Ari Mabo. He's a dog. Like that's what we should do right now at this point. But yeah, no, I think this is the right pick for the way that you're trying to rebuild this defense and bringing Robert Saleh back. It would have to be one of these guys, and they landed on Mykel. You can't really be upset with that.
I'm trying to look. What has the 49ers said? Oh, did you see the tweet from Jed York? Of course. Jed has to be tweeting. Here's the tweet from Jed York. Saleh is back in the building, ladies and gentlemen. #trenches. When he was hired, Tim Kawakami put out a tweet that said, or an article, and in the article it said that Robert Saleh has more power than he's ever had before. There was a large contingent of people, cough, cough, me, cough, cough as one of them, that says if they decided to move on from Kyle Shanahan, I think Robert Saleh is the coach in waiting. Why not, if you're the 49ers, go with the guy that not only helps you right now, but if you made a coaching change, that number one pick still has the support of the guy that's going to be running your team, Jay.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. We should have seen this coming. You don't bring in Robert Saleh and Gus Bradley and then go offensive line if it's not one of the top guys. You have to rebuild the defensive line, and you have to help with the run defense. And they've done both of those things with this pick, and it's in tandem with the fact that Robert Saleh's here. And I thought it was really interesting in Fred Warner's press conference when he said that he had a meeting with John Lynch, and John Lynch was so excited because he believes that Robert Saleh has developed his scheme and become
Mhm.
better, and it's evolved. And I thought that was one of the things that kind of fell by the wayside because everyone was worried about Warner's contract and everything. But there's a lot of positivity in the building because of Robert Saleh, and they do believe in him that much. That's why this pick feels like it had to be defensive line, because then why did you bring Robert Saleh here if you're going to address it later on when you had one of these top guys on the board?
Is it a little weird that the owner is tweeting about the defensive coordinator after they made the first round pick? Or am I reading too
little.
much into this, Levin?
No, I would say it's a little weird for the first thing mentioned following the draft. The first round draft pick is the defensive coordinator. A little
Like,
weird.
it almost feels like Robert Saleh's back. All right, the adults are running the show again.
Yeah.
Guys. Like, doesn't it feel like that stuff?
Finally got someone who knows what he's looking at with these
Oh,
draft picks,
God.
man.
Right,
No, I mean, look, Robert Saleh is getting paid a shit ton of money. I mean, and that's
Oop.
coming out of Jed's pockets. So I think he's excited to have Saleh back, and I think he knows that he was worth it. I don't know. Yeah, as the comment says here, Jed York is a little weird. But he's excited for Saleh to be back, and maybe wants him to stay more than one season as well. So maybe they're just trying to, butter him up a little bit too.
Jordan
I miss when
Schultz.
owners were silent.
Yeah, exactly. Jordan Schultz tweeted the Niners explored trading up, but ultimately stayed put and got their guy at 11. Now, look, every team is going to tell you after the draft, oh, we got exactly the guy we want him at the spot, but they didn't need to trade up. We've been talking about it now for 20 minutes. So this first round broke perfectly for the 49ers. It was exactly what they wanted if they were going defensive line. And yeah, I'm sure they explored trading up, but they were probably like, well, wait a minute. Mason Graham and Abdul Carter are the only defensive linemen that have gone. We don't need to do anything yet. And they didn't. And they stayed put, and they got the guy that you have to assume it's the guy they wanted because only two other dudes were off the board.
Mason Graham, who?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they would have taken it, but
that would have taken a bounty to get to 5.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm glad they played it this way because, like, I don't
Mhm.
know if it was something we talked about, Jay, on Bully Ball this week, but it's like, I know at one of my shows I talked about it. You got to let the board just come to you and see how the chips fall. And it played out perfectly for the 49ers. You wouldn't have even known it would have played out that way had you just moved up, right? And you would have given up more picks. You need all these picks to find impact guys on your defense. They still get their guy, and they were able to do that, staying right where they were. So I think smart teams, just kind of wait to see how the draft plays out, and it played perfectly for the Niners.
Let's
Picks
zoom
in for
out.
the Cowboys.
Let's zoom out a little bit before we get to the Cowboys pick and take a look, since I was just updating the graphic and I want to feel proud of myself. Here is the entire first round as it has gone so far. Fierro says, knowing Mykel's skill set, does that change the second round plan? Do we lean further towards one position versus another right now? I mean, you got to see how it falls, right? If somehow Walter Nolan falls out of round one, if you could snag Walter Nolan in round 2, Jay, would you even, if you're the Niners, be willing to trade up in round 2 or maybe the back end of round 1 to get a Walter Nolan?
If you get Walter Nolan and you have any position to go get him in the second round, you go get him.
Yeah.
Because that's your defensive tackle that I thought, when we talked about it, Steph, right? I said, reading the tea leaves and everything, I thought it would be Walter Nolan. You said you thought it would be Mykel Williams, obviously smartest in the room. But like, if they can get Walter Nolan in the second round, that's insane value. And it's a player that you can add on top of Mykel Williams. And what I want to say is this: when you're looking at the first round of any draft, I don't think you can fully understand what the draft class is going to look like without the other pieces. And what I mean by that is, in a vacuum, if you're not in love with this first round pick, but you nail your second and third round picks, what does it matter? And what I mean by that is, last year, Ricky Pearsall was the pick, right? And everyone didn't like that. Everyone wanted Cooper DeJean. But then you end up with Pooney, Bernardo Green. Would you have felt better if they took Pooney in the first round and then Pearsall in the second round? Because it doesn't really matter where they land. So I think it's hard in a vacuum to look at this number 1 pick. You have your instant reaction clearly in your take. But until you find out what the second round pick is, it may not come into focus what it is. And if they hit, who cares where you took them?
Steph, I know you got to hop out. I want to give you the final word here. Thank you for joining us for an hour and a half. What's the final word here before you leave us?
Well, yeah, I just kind of wanted to piggyback on that too, because early on in the draft process, I mean, we have kind of seen that in a lot of mocks, Walter Nolan was falling out of the first round in some of them, right? So that very well could be a possibility. And even if it's not Nolan, I do like the possibility of maybe a Derek Harmon. There's some other guys, Kenneth Grant, that could be available around that range. And look, the fact that they were willing to move up in the first round, I think tells you they'd be willing to move up in the second round too if there was a guy that they really liked there. So I'm just, so far, great start to the draft. I'm really happy. This is weird because we're not usually this happy, but yeah, this is awesome, and this was great. Thanks for setting this up, Rob. And it'll still be streaming on my channel for anyone that's watching. But yeah, I'm gonna hop on my channel and do a show really quick.
How are you gonna hop on your channel when you're live?
Yeah, you can't. You gotta disconnect it.
Oh, okay.
You can't run two streams.
Steph wants to take over the world.
I feel
Right.
I feel like I have before, but I'll figure it out. Maybe I'll just delete this one.
Oh, thank you, Steph. We appreciate it. You are the absolute best.
All right,
Nice
thanks,
talking to you,
guys.
Steph.
Let's get to
Peace.
some reaction from fans. We got a couple of super chats here I want to get to. Perfect Blackness has one. Says, I hope I'm wrong, and thank you, Perfect Blackness, for the super chat, but I think Mykel Williams is fool's gold. Walter Nolan or Kenneth Grant would have been better picks. Jay, I don't know. I mean, I know that people fell in love with Walter Nolan, and that's fine, but like Mykel Williams played on a really good defense. They rotated him a lot, so he didn't get maybe as much opportunity as some of the other pass rushers. That may have contributed to his low sack total. And yeah, maybe I'm on the hopium right now. I'm fully willing to admit that. But I mean, I think that this is exactly what they needed, and they still have an opportunity to get a defensive tackle.
Yeah, this definitely doesn't put the 49ers out of taking a defensive tackle, right? I think there's different and multiple ways that you could have done this. If you go Nolan in this round, then do you go Landon Jackson in the second round and get your edge that way? Or, do you go get your edge first and get your defensive lineman there? It just depends on the combination that you prefer. But this definitely doesn't mean that all of a sudden now the 49ers are just like, well, we got our edge guy and that's it. We're done with the defensive line. They absolutely are going to address this one, possibly two more times, especially on the back end later rounds where, you can take one of those raw developmental projects and not feel so bad because they're later in the draft as opposed to, somebody a little bit earlier who's raw. So I wouldn't worry as much about this. I just think there's different ways and possibilities to go about this. The 49ers are absolutely going to address this defensive line one more time because they only have like 7 or 8 of them right now as it is, Otherwise, Rob Levin and I are going to have to get out there, if they don't do this again. And I don't have pass rush moves.
Levin, what do you
I don't think it would matter if you had pass rush moves because you're going to get all three of us would get thrown straight to the sidelines.
Joe Tiz says Williams is Alden Smith 2.0 minus the burner. They are physically similar in terms of height and weight. They're both 6'5", I think. I think that Williams is actually about 10 pounds heavier than I think Alden Smith was 255. I think Williams is like 260, 265, something like that. Doesn't mean they're the same player at all.
Alden had a unique trait that is what made him so great. He had the longest arms you've ever seen.
Yeah.
And that allowed him to get his hands on the offensive tackle before they could get it on him. Alden Smith was so effective, not necessarily because of how great his pass rush moves were or how athletic he was or any of that. It was literally like big brother, little brother fight. He could get his hands on you while you couldn't get your hands on him.
He was simultaneously the toughest guy that Joe Staley and Trent Williams ever faced. Before we get back to anything else, I do have to apologize to Jason Aponte. Jay, I forgot the Yankees hat. I didn't mean to welch on the bet. I lost the bet because I thought that Brandon Ayuk was going to get traded. And I said if I lost, I would wear a Yankees hat on the draft stream. I flat out forgot. I was doing draft prep all day. It's a terrible job out of me. So now I owe you something even bigger. So I have to figure out what it is, but that's my fault.
No, it's fine. I mean, you could just, you can wear the hat, whenever, we could do it again, it's fine. Like just wear the hat. We don't have to do anything more. But yeah, the Miami Dolphins pick is in. And it's going to be very interesting because there was a lot of chatter about Gray Zabel being, almost a lock for them as well, too, right? At 13. So there was a lot of smoke about him being up a little bit further. I wouldn't be shocked if the Dolphins address the defensive line with this pick, right here as well, too. And I think once you get to that point, then 14, I think Tyler Warren's a lock to go to the Colts at that point right there. So like it's starting to round into shape. And I think the important part of watching the board is looking for those opportunities to strike and trade back up, because it does seem like the New York Giants are watching where Jackson Dart falls and want to jump back up. Shedeur Sanders is still on the board right now. So that doesn't, the New Orleans Saints might be eager to do that because they did call about the number 1 pick for Cam Ward that we found out today. But all of these things and any sort of shakeup or any sort of crazy pick only helps the 49ers because it'll help land, them another player and a shot at that.
That is true. I like crazy picks. I like chaos. As I said, I'm seeing rumors about the Dolphins pick. It's a defensive tackle, I believe. We're not going to spoil it yet. But if that's true, that one name off the board for the 49ers. Let's get to a couple of comments here. Arter says, at least we didn't pick Shamar Stewart. I totally agree. Rachel says, so glad it wasn't Tyler Warren. A lot of people wanting to avoid these sort of landmines, as we talked about, and hopefully the 49ers did that. One good decision that was made by me, quite frankly. I'd like to thank myself because we have a new addition to the Gold Standard 49ers podcast network. We waited to announce it. The time is now. I would like everybody to give a warm welcome to somebody that a lot of fans wanted to see join the network. It has happened. Mr. Football Academy himself, Johnny Dell, is now officially part of the Gold Standard 49ers podcast team. He joins us here. Johnny, thank you so much for jumping in.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm hyped. I'm not going to lie. I'm hyped about the Mykel Williams pick. I really did like him. I've even got some film to go over if you want it, because I'd done a lot of film study on this kid. And I was falling I came away from the Senior Bowl really high on Shamar Stewart because he was so impressive there. And then that relationship cooled very quickly in coming away from it and watching some of the tape. Mykel Williams is opposite. As we've gotten closer and closer, I had been warming to him as a pick because I felt like he was the guy that could come in and immediately give you an edge presence against the run. And he was a good, safe pick there that didn't have the potential potholes of some of the other guys. And there's a lot of good defensive players in this draft, and I think they can address a lot of things.
I want to get to that in a second, but I know, Jay, you got to run. Kenneth Grant has officially been drafted by the Miami Dolphins, the defensive tackle out of Michigan. So 13 picks down. How do you feel right now before you bounce?
I feel great. I again, the pick was the pick was just discussed about who it would be, right? Was it going to be Nolan? Was it going to be Williams? Was it going to be Harmon? But it was always going to be defensive line. Again, you don't bring Robert Saleh and Gus Bradley back and then draft an offensive lineman, especially if it's not going to be Membo or Campbell. After that, all those offensive linemen, I let somebody else take a chance on Kelvin Banks. I wasn't exactly, enthralled with him. I'm not the biggest O-line enthusiast or anything like that, but I feel like it's fine. Again, if I had to make a prediction for this Colts pick, though, I don't see how Tyler Warren escapes them right here at 14. I really just don't. So if that happens, again, the board is falling in a certain way that, 15 might go, Will Johnson, 16 could be Will Johnson. One of those two guys could be there. But again, the 49ers will have a look at another defensive lineman. It's just all about being aggressive. And if they were looking to move up in this first round, you can bet that they're going to be looking up again in the second round. And that should be exciting. So tomorrow's going to be a really exciting day, maybe even today. Let's see what happens.
Well, Jay, thank you so much for hopping in. We appreciate it. You can follow Jay on X at JasonAponte2103. Got a YouTube channel as well. Go subscribe. I promise.
Congrats, Johnny. Welcome to the team, gang.
Hey, thank you so much, Jay.
So, all right, Johnny, you got film on Mykel Williams. Make us feel even better, please.
All right. So hopefully I don't have any technical difficulties here.
Oh, I see it there. I might have to add it to the stage.
All right. So here we go. Mykel Williams. He's number 13. He's on the edge. This is against Texas, okay? So this was for the SEC championship. What they're going to do is they're going to try and fake a run here. They're going to pull a guard to come and kick him out and go play action pass. So what I want you to see is the violence off the edge, the length in the arms, and the power. So he's going to meet this tackle or guard. Sorry, my mouse just froze up. Of all things to freeze up, my mouse froze up. Let's get it back here. Watch the length, okay? The length to get guys off of you and the power. That's a pulling guard that's meeting him. He sets the edge, lifts him off the ground, gets it off there, and then sheds it and goes, and he forces a horrible throw from the quarterback in crunch time in this game, okay? So he's got the burst there. Then you say, okay, they can line him up in multiple positions, and he's strong. So they're going to line him up at a 5 technique here, really kind of a 4-eye over the tackle. And Texas is they're trying to get him pushed out of this hole and this running back right up in that lane. So watch what he does here. He's going to sink his hips, use that leverage, stand this tackle up, and there's nowhere for the running back to go in that run lane. Okay, this is a defensive end that can stand up against a tackle in the run game. Here, they're going to run a little stunt with him. He has the athleticism to do it. Texas picks it up pretty well. I was actually using this clip for a different player, but it was in my reel here. But now we get back to him. Okay, he's now over the guard. You're going to see now the ability, again, to rush the passer. Relentless motor. That's the one thing that I have on him, is that he's got a relentless motor in the pass rush. So he's going to have to fight through 2 guys to get to this pass rush. So first he takes on the guard, then he takes on the center. He shakes both of them, and then he's still running the quarterback down, flushes him out for another incomplete pass. Okay, so we're seeing that relentless motor. They're going to try and come with a run now. This is a run version of the play action we saw. They're going to pull this guard, try and kick him out. Watch the reaction. He's going to read it, and then he's going to close the space. He doesn't wait for the guard to come to him. He goes and he initiates contact with the guard, stands him up, pow. Okay, the only reason this running back gets anything is he makes an incredible jump cut. He still doesn't get much because he has to run outside of his blocking, but he has nowhere to go because Mykel Williams set the edge in the run. So you're seeing that he's a great run player. Here, the tackle's now going to try. He's on the right side. He's right here. He's going to try the tackle's trying to scoop him. So he's trying to seal him off, and they're going to try and run outside. Okay, here he's going to see it. He's going to understand these guys are trying to seal him off, and he's going to keep the edge and let Jalen Walker fill. So Jalen Walker gets the tackle. He's going to set the edge. Now, he did get pancaked a little bit, but again, he kept his run fit, and he ended up on top. So
what you're telling me,
I really like it.
As this commenter says, he's better than Yetur Gross-Matos.
Yeah. I mean, he brings it, and Leonard Floyd was a big liability in the run game. So this immediately means you now have accordion bookends on each side. Your edges are not going to get pushed wide and exposed. That was something that hurt our tackles during the season last year, is that the edges weren't getting compressed enough. They're playing in more space. Fred Warner's playing in more space. That leads to a lot of missed tackles in the middle. That leads to a lot of open run lanes in the middle. You are now accordioning, if that's even a word, the edges, shrinking those edges and making offenses play in a tighter space. You're making them play in a phone book, and that now sets up for, you can go get a Darius Alexander, you can go get a Collins, you can go get a TJ, I forget his last name, from South Carolina. You can go get a number of guys. I'm really high on Jamari Caldwell out of Oregon. I think all those guys are going to be there. You can get a Deion Walker, you can get a Cam Jackson, these big space eaters that are 340 plus. That now you compare that, you clog up that line, and you really help your linebackers, your safeties, everything. So I really like this pick. And he was third on the team in sacks, but the guy that was tied for first ahead of him, it was Chambis. He was, to me, like their 4th best edge player. He got a lot of cleanup sacks because Williams and Walker were creating so much havoc. I love this pick. And
Manny R, sorry, Levin, I didn't mean to cut you off. Manny R says, talking like this is a guarantee. Yeah, obviously we don't know how good these guys are going to be, of course. But dude, if I can't be happy tonight, then I can never be happy. Like, let me have tonight.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah,
going to say,
absolutely.
Johnny, it's nice to finally actually talk to you. I don't know if you're aware, but I believe you're the same Johnny Dell that 8-9 years ago we would have conversations on 49ers Web Zone.
I am.
Message board. Yeah. I was going to say back in the day before I started writing for them and all that, we sometimes agreed. We sometimes didn't agree. But yeah, I've followed your stuff and watched your videos for almost a decade now, and this is the first time we have talked. So first, welcome. Second, my condolences for joining us.
Don't do that.
You're stuck
Wow.
now. You put your name to the paper, you know.
That's true. It's official. The paperwork is in. Nick Wagner of ESPN tweeted, Mykel Williams lined up all over the place at Georgia, but he did get some experience as a 9 technique, which should help him transition to San Francisco. He was 30% of his defensive snaps were at 4-eye, 22% at the 9 technique, 17% at outside linebacker, 6% at 3 technique. Johnny, can you help break that down for people that don't know what the hell any of that means?
Yeah, so 4-eye, it's what I showed there earlier, lining up head up inside on the inside shoulder of the tackle. That's a tough position. That's usually what we saw from like Eric Armstead, from DeForest Buckner when they were in the 3-4, right? They're playing 5 or 4-eye, where you have to take on that tackle and you have to, one, also set the edge with them and take the inside. Like it's tough work in there. You usually see guys who are 290 playing 5 and 4-eye. He's bigger than that. That's Justin Smith, for old Cowboy, if a lot of people remember that. Like he was that kind of defensive end position. But so Williams there, that means he's got lots of power, able to hold up against those tackles and guards in the run game. 9 technique, that's going to be that wide pass rushing set that we have. Outside linebacker is going to be more like a 7 tech. It's going to be lining up over the tight end. So, what you're seeing from him, you can't block him with the tight end. It's going to be hard with the tackle, hard with the guard. So he's just a tough guy to move and get out of the way, and sets the edge in the run game, which is number one. You have to do that to earn the right to rush the passer. And so that's the biggest thing I wanted to see them do in this draft, because we were so bad against the run last year, is I wanted to see a good run defender there more than anything that has upside for a pass rusher. He's got the athleticism to do the stunts and twists that we're going to do. I don't think we're going to ask him to line up and be a Nick Bosa and win by being just so awesome all the time. They're going to allow him to do stunts and twists. That's what they did with Leonard Floyd, and Leonard Floyd just had lost the feet to do it really well. I saw him consistently tripping over defensive tackles and their feet and being a little slow on those inside moves. He can do that. I saw it at Georgia. They ran a bajillion stunts and twists. So he's got the pedigree to do that. He's got the mind to do it. They had to learn a lot. And what that multiple positions also mean is he's a smart kid, because he had to learn a lot of different pressure pass, a lot of different rush pass. And so he's already shown that he can absorb that and execute it on the field, which is a big, big selling point coming to our system.
San Mateo says quarterbacks are going to run from Bosa into Mykel Williams. That's the
Drake
goal.
Jackson special.
Right. But except no one else could do it. I mean, Drake had those 3 sacks in that one game, and that was pretty much it. David Lombardi tweets out, Mykel Williams has 34 3/8 inch arms. That's longer than Shamar Stewart. The Niners love that in their in-line players. He fits the prototypical mold of the modern 3-down NFL edge rusher, which is one of the most coveted positions in the game, hence the 11th pick. Admittedly, David Lombardi was never going to say anything bad about anybody the 49ers picked in this spot. Like, let's just be real. But
It's
again,
true.
if we can't be happy tonight, then we can't be happy at all. So I'm going to go with the hopium. I'm going to assume that this is a good pick. Again, he was the guy I wanted. So the 49ers picked the guy I wanted. Certainly, I'm going to be happy about that. And I think it was, again, we talked about this before you hopped in, Johnny. Like, they just didn't do the stupid thing. They didn't screw around.
Mm-hmm.
Pick was in. It was the Bears,
Mm-hmm.
Colston Loveland, and then it was boom, Niners pick is in. That means that there was
consensus
in the draft room by the 49ers, no screwing around, and they got this thing done right quick and in a hurry.
Yeah, and what it showed on the film, like those long arms, you saw it right there on the film, right? It's not just a measurable that's there. You saw him use that and use it to his advantage. That length means a lot as a defensive edge player, especially when you're going against tackles like Kelvin Banks. Kelvin Banks, that was the big plus I saw from him, was his arm length. I was not in love with his movement skills for our scheme, so I was fine with him not being there. But his arm length just shot off the tape, and those were some of the funnest battles. I loved watching Kelvin Banks against Mykel Williams. I watched like 2 hours of it when they had their first game, and that was a wonderful battle because both of those guys were so long. And I will tell you, he beat Kelvin Banks, and you don't see Kelvin Banks get beat in pass rush very much, just because of that arm length that Kelvin Banks couldn't use it to his advantage as much. So I love it.